Halo Episode 3 review, and I don't know how we're gonna top this. In the first episode, he took his helmet off. In the second, he took his armor off. In this one, he's completely stark bollock naked, with his dong just swinging in the breeze. Honestly, what are they gonna do in the fourth one? We're gonna have to go internal. Is someone gonna get a camera and just shove it up his jacksie so we can see his colon? Because quite frankly, it's the only way forward I can see at this point, and if I think that, they've got something planned which is worse. But I've reviewed the other episodes, link in the description below to that playlist. Now let's get stuck in. We start on a recycling plastic where these people are recycling cardboard and plastic. I don't know why. It's not even actually valuable. At least if they were digging through computers for precious metals, it would make sense, but nothing else in this episode makes sense, so why would we start here? There are kids on this planet, and instead of working there reading a book, she can also afford 3 different mag-light torches rather than just using one. Maybe cardboard pays after all. He starts explaining to her what a story is, presumably because she's completely mentally deficient, and then he just baits her and says, if you read something in a book, it has to happen, and so we should kiss. I'm like, what? And we start to get the most awkward close-up of all time, and anyone that decided to put that in, and anyone that signed it off on the way, should all have their computer investigated, because you'll probably find something. But along come the guards, and they're randomly beating all of the workers for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And he sees the 2 kids in the tent not working, and decides to chase after them because the kids just run off. None of this makes sense. Because there's guards everywhere, where are they gonna go? So obviously, they get caught by the adults with longer legs. The stupid thing is, he hits one of them to stop them, and then when they're on the floor, keeps smacking them. And seriously, what is that expression? This was a kid, a worker, and now you've beaten them to death. Do you think they're gonna work harder now you've done that to them? Unless you've developed necromancy, your cardboard train is over. He's actually working against the actual aim he's trying to achieve. So she takes the book because presumably she wants to be reminded of the time a man took advantage of her incredibly low IQ, who didn't understand how words work, or the fact what a story is. The guy's been on the floor for a second, she's already got an entirely wet face. She's the fastest crier in the West. Only from one eye, though. It's just this side of her face is sad. This one's fine. It's a bit weird. But down come the Covenant. Of course, they're elites because we've only got one CGI model, as it's much cheaper in this $10 million an episode show. Now, if all these people are panicking because they thought the Covenant was a myth, but now they've seen them, so they realize they're real and they're all about to die, none of this next bit makes sense. Because this guy grabs the girl and he's like, I'll teach you a lesson. You might have more important things to worry about, like surviving. But instead, he throws her down, and it just seems like every man in this entire planet is bad, including her friend. He just starts electrocuting her. For no reason. She hasn't done anything. She wasn't picking up cardboard for a bit, and then she ran off. And for some reason, this guy is so desperate to wipe her out as well. If this is how you treat your workforce, I'm amazed you got one left. But along come the Covenant, and they're hunting for something. That stick glows when they get closer to it. No, that's really the show. This guy keeps poking her with a stick. You can tell he's evil because he's got gritted teeth. He's so angry, but he doesn't know why. He does get yeeted by the Covenant, though, which is at least one funny moment of respite from the rest of the show. So they point the stick at the girl, and the other one thinks, oh, it's behind that creature because he's got the IQ of a 2-year-old. He puts the stick that close to her before he actually realizes, no, it's definitely her. Yeah, because that cardboard behind her was looking really promising, wasn't it, love? The logic here is literally that one human did a bad thing to my friend, therefore aliens must be good and I'm not scared of them. That's the depth of this plot and this scene, and the only reason why she's not scared of someone that looks like he's about to just eat her face. But they realize she's special, take her away in the ship, and she grabs her book. And there she is, still with the book, and as we'll see later in the show, still as moronic. This is a human asking a worm for fashion advice, and you only have to look at a catwalk to realize that even humans have no idea what looks good nowadays. But they discuss her plan, and she wants to go to Madrigal to pick up the scent of the magic triangle. She says the spirit that called her there still remains. It doesn't explain what this spirit is or how it works, much like the magic triangle itself. But they ask her what she's going to do if she meets Master Chief, and given what we've seen in the last episode and this one, it's probably just take off all of her clothes. But she says she's more concerned with his head, and it might not be that one, so it could still be right. We hit the intro sequence, and if you think that was a pile of nonsense, it was. Back at UNSC headquarters, where we desperately try and think that talking in corridors about our feelings is some shrewd political maneuvering. But we've got Woman 1 and 2 discussing the magic triangle, and no, I'm not going to learn their names. All she's looking at is a hologram of it, but apparently she can tell oh so much from this picture, including what it's made out of, somehow. She's also told that it's over 10,000 years old, which is pre-human, and possibly pre-Covenant. I thought they didn't know anything about the Covenant. I'm really losing track of whether they actually know stuff about them or not at this point. Are they a myth, or do they know the exact amount of time that they've spent in the universe? You've got to pick one of them. You can clearly see here, it's just a picture, a hologram. It's not in front of her. But she simultaneously knows that it's actually alive, biological, with technology built into it. It's a picture, love. But she gets told that Master Chief has said it's to do with a weapon somewhere, and she gets really angry. Why am I only finding out about this now? I don't know. It's the first time you've ever seen a hologram of it, love. How much information were you expecting before you'd actually been given access to it? But instead we find out that she's overruling Halsey, who doesn't want her to know. But after the meeting last time, where this woman fully agreed with Halsey even though she was under no obligation to, and played herself, apparently she's mad at Halsey for it and wants to set up another team, and she will be integral to it. She no longer wants to be reliant on Halsey so much, so you should probably stop agreeing with her in meetings. It's ridiculous. This guy is the definition of creepy weird scientist. Stay off the soy milk, everybody. No man should ever pull that expression, especially if you're interested in a colleague. Now, she brings in this metal puzzle, which I think is meant to be difficult, but when you see how she puts it together, it's very, very easy to do and obvious. Now, this gets weird because she is a clone of her, and yet she's got memories of her in the past, because they're the memories of when she took the samples of the clone in the first place. So for some reason, if I take a skin sample, that includes all of my memories. That's literally what the show's saying. Because otherwise, if it was just a biological sample and a scan of her brain, then you would have thought she'd wanted to do a more modern scan with all of her new memories. But they have a little bit of a fight, because she's like, no, I collected samples, not you. But from her perspective, she was the one that did it because she's got all the memories of it. It's going to get weird. Apparently over 38 children died making the Spartans, but she thinks it's worth it because the rest became Spartans. The deaths of 38 children is a price that she's willing to pay. The issue is, if 38 was half of them, why is there only 4 in the show? She puts together the simplest test of IQ I've ever seen. It's just a pyramid made out of a tiny few amount of shapes, which are all really obvious to put together. But she works out that she's probably interested in her brain. But Halsey says, I've perfected real-time neuroelectrical imaging, which if you think about the words, means basically she can scan your brain in real time and has nothing to do with AI or computers. She's like, oh no, Cortana's amazing. But the clone's discussing, it's like, well, when you were my age, you weren't sure if actually there was a clone in front of you, would you be able to go through with your plan? Well, what happened? And she says progress. Yes, Halsey is calling herself progressive as she murders hundreds of people. I think we've got a rebel in the writing room. So now Master Chief isn't even in his pajamas, he's in a medical gown, which probably opens at the back for easy access. I don't know if this is meant to be a medical lab or some kind of science station, but in either of those situations, I don't know why we've got 2 suits of armor, one type A and one type B. How are they useful? But they're trying to convince him to take on Cortana, and he's like, no, they can't do it to me, they can't actually punish me for anything, because I'm a Spartan and I'm too valuable to be kept off the battlefield. He's a bit full of himself, but he's probably accurate. But Halsey argues that that argument is exactly how she got the AI into his face in the first place. And this is where, and I don't know if it's just me, but I don't understand what Cortana is even meant to achieve in this. Because he's like, I don't need a babysitter. She says it's not a babysitter, it's an upgrade. And it'll allow us to analyze the artifact years in advance. How? They talk about Cortana as if she's some super-powered computer, and yet, as far as the show seems to say, she's implanted in his brain. So Cortana would only have the computing power of his brain. I could have at least understood it was some kind of remote link to a computer, but that doesn't seem to be what anyone's suggesting here, especially when you see how it's transferred. Welcome to the land of weird science, where we don't really need to make anything make sense. They're on 2 separate tables, and for some reason use 2 different restraining technologies. With clone Halsey, you've got solid straps that come up and restrain her. At least this one makes sense. Master Chief, though, not so much. Because she presses a button, his eyes widen in a room with all the lights beaming in his face, so he will probably go blind, and then for some reason, his body expands? No, watch this. What was that meant to be? I could have even understood if it was like, well, it was some kind of localized gravity field just to pull him closer to the table. It's like, well, okay, but how come he also went down into the table and his chest expanded at the same time? So we've got creepy scientist that I wouldn't trust to give me a Twinkie, and he's telling her he wants to paralyze her entire body. Halsey's meant to be smart at this point, but the clone isn't. At least he's honest though. She says, will it hurt? He's like, yes. And I'm not sure whether he means the paralytic or what he's about to try and do to her, because he paralyzes her and then starts complimenting her brain. Look, I know some people say compliment a woman on something other than her looks, but this is, not going to work for you, dude.
You have the most beautiful brain.
You would have stood a better chance if you'd asked her for a cheeky Nando's. But this alpha male Chad isn't finished yet.
You will be part of something bigger and better.
I think he means his dangly bits. And then he goes in to kiss her, and I'm like, you do realize she's still going to exist, right? And she'll remember everything you've done to her, and will also be a super powerful computer, which is built in to one of the strongest, most brutal military agents of all time. And you've decided that now is the time to do that, right? At this point, Halsey is less dangerous than what that woman will become. Everyone in this show is an idiot. He's only stopped because Halsey walks into the room. Of course, neither of the two Halseys mention it to each other, you know, that guy's a creep and you can't trust him. You should probably get rid of him. No, we're just gonna let that pass. Mind you, given what's about to happen next, it seems Halsey will let anyone get away with anything. Not only is this an incredibly creepy scene, but they really drag it out forever just to try and make her feel as uncomfortable as possible, and none of it makes any sense. I'm not going to show you the next bit, but they are trying to extract her brain. How are they going to do that through her eyeball? Please, somebody enlighten me. This is her brain being digitally sucked out through her eyeball. That's not how eyeballs work. Eyeballs are receptors, they're not transmitters. Given the fact that we already know that Halsey can clone her brain because she put it in a clone, then why doesn't she just take whatever image she implanted on the clone and put that into Cortana? Unless we're back to the idea that skin cells actually carry all of your human memories as well, which is even more ridiculous. This says neural substrate acquisition completed, because they didn't want to say we sucked out her brain through her eyeballs. When you see how remarkably small Halsey's brain actually is, a lot more about the show makes sense. But this bit won't, because they're drilling in the back of his head. They've pulled the brain out of one woman to put it in a chip, only to put it into the Master Chief. So someone who had a brain before will now be moved into a new brain, and somehow that's meant to make them super intelligent. This is why you should have just said she was a huge data bank of computers, because now she just has this brain of one person. But the problem with that is so does Halsey in the first place. Now they move the body of the clone over into a new tank. They implant the chip in Master Chief, and you can see it take over a portion of his brain. I don't know what this is meant to be. Are you trying to make toast? This guy has a little tiny hole in his head, but for some reason, rather than just seal the hole, we're going to leave this big horizontal scar on the back of his head, clearly designed to look hot, as if it's going to burn the wound. And all it does is spray this red mist on him, doesn't even touch him at all. Oh, it's awful. Magic. Magic is how this show says everything works. But clone Halsey is lowered into a vat of acid, which seems really overkill. There's far more efficient ways to do it. Rather just get a huge vat of acid in your lab to melt people in. They mentioned before how Halsey has like 80% of their budget. It's because she just wastes it on stuff like this. But here we are with Cortana, the image which enraged people around the internet during the trailer. But Cortana looks at Master Chief and says, oh, he's above him in strength, endurance, and good instincts. He's a natural leader. I can absolutely understand why you chose him. And that's in their own script, but they don't remember it in 3 minutes, so we'll get to that. Because she says, there's a problem. I'm unable to take complete control of Master Chief. I mean, before you were just saying what a great leader is, how he is a great person, why this is the reason that he should actually be chosen. And now you want to wipe that out by taking control of him, so why was his instincts important at all? If you just wanted to see him as a piece of meat, and the show certainly does later on, then anything related to him as a person is irrelevant, as it would be replaced by Cortana. And boy, is she desperate to overrule the man. I don't know if Cortana's meant to be likable, but this episode just makes her seem like a power-hungry cow. And she just starts ranting at Halsey. I'm supposed to optimize both his physical and his mental capabilities by actually taking complete control of him. And I'm like, that's not optimizing anything. That makes you an evil AI. That's actually replacing him, not optimizing him. But she's so desperate to do it. The way they describe it is basically the death of Master Chief. And yet the show doesn't seem to act like this matters. And Cortana's got this weird friendly attitude while she's talking about annihilating Master Chief from existence. Oh, why have you stopped me from achieving this directive? Like, I don't know. If you actually want the audience to like your love, maybe not try and wipe out the only character anyone cares about in the entire show. I don't know. But we keep annihilating science because Halsey says, you know, you've got an hour. Why don't you use that time to familiarize yourself with the entire trove of human knowledge you've now got access to? What will I do with the other 52.4 minutes? I'm like, I don't know. Firstly, how are you even going to store all of that knowledge? Because you've only got access to one man's brain. So unless we're saying that Master Chief can now download the entirety of all human knowledge, then Halsey goes, oh, that's very impressive. It's like, yeah, I'm impressed by Master Chief's brain as well, because as far as the show has told us, that's the only processing power she's got. I had thought we'd got rid of the most annoying woman in the universe, but apparently no such luck. She is, however, even more insufferable in this episode than previous ones, which I have to say I'm pretty impressed by. This is another scene where we're supposed to know she's angry even though she's got zero expression on her face just because her ears and her nostrils flare. But she goes up to the failed Spartan who left as a child and was too stupid to take his helmet with him and says she wants to go back to Madrigal. And she's like, but Finch is taking over and I have to join the resistance. What are you gonna do? Nag him to death? The only way she could beat him is if she made him lose the will to live, and I've got to be honest, she's actually pretty good at that as far as I'm concerned. And he just goes, little girl like you? I'm not a little girl. Yes, you are. Objectively, it's a factual reality of life. And that's why I'd really love her to take the advice of she should be seen and not heard. Although, quite frankly, if she wasn't seen as well, that would also be another advantage. But the dude just goes, I promised John I'd keep you safe and I don't see any reason to break that. I'm like, I could reel off 100 reasons for that just off the top of my head. You clearly haven't spoken to her much. And the sheer sense of dripping entitlement coming off her during this entire scene is astonishing. She's like, oh, I'm sure there's some people loyal to my father in the capital city, I know it. She's like, I'm not going to fight for you. Oh, you don't need to fight. I just need you to give me a ship, fly me over there, and protect me until I find these loyal people which may or may not exist. You're actually asking him for more than fighting then, aren't you? Because I'm not interested in actually playing bodyguard for the Princess of Madrigal. She's like, well, give me a ship. Because I'm sure slipstream-capable ships are just all over the place and basically free. This is no different than me going, can you give me a lift to Tesco? They say no. I'm like, well, okay, just give me your car forever then. And 10 of your bodyguards to protect me from the people that are there. Completely insane. And he treats her exactly how she deserves, as this spoilt little brat. He turns his back on her and walks off, completely ignoring her like she deserves. And she goes, don't turn your back on me, asshole. I'm like, who on earth do you think you're talking to, dear? And the dude stops. And I'm like, well, okay. Finally, maybe he's about to shoot her in the face. Because she's about 3 foot shorter than him, and still doesn't have the intelligence to look sorry or apologize. Let alone the manners. And he's like, as a courtesy to John, I'm not going to crush your skull. I'm like, John's not even here, though. I am. Do it for me, dude. Do it for me. Let alone the other 5 people that watch the show. Think about them. And he's like, run along home. I'll see you at dinner. And gives her a grin, which implies the food is poisoned. But at this point, I'm really hoping so. So this is John discovering that he's got a lying, deceitful woman in his ear 24 hours a day, and he doesn't even get to sleep with her. Honestly, I'm not sensing the upside to this equation. But we do get this glorious little exchange.
Would you like to meet her?
Not particularly, no.
Hello, Master Chief. I'm the person that just 5 minutes ago wanted to take over your entire brain and wipe you off the face of the earth after complimenting you on your leadership skills. Somehow, they've managed to make Cortana more unlikable than everybody else, and I think it's just her friendly tone of voice that does it. They've shown her to be completely and utterly evil, and yet she's pretending to be everybody's friend.
I'm designed to look familiar. My voice and accent to be pleasant.
Well, you failed on that one, love, although it might just be because I've seen your personality, which makes your voice sound like nails on a chalkboard. I don't know what it is when you try and wipe out a guy's entire brain. I just take an instant disliking to you, and your accent can't really make up for that. I apologize. But Master Chief is completely ignoring her and just talking to Halsey because, at the end of the day, she is just an AI. And admittedly, a hypocritical one when she says this.
I see it as more of a partnership.
How do you see it as a partnership? You wanted to take over his entire brain. I have no idea why they're making her seem like she's the offended one. You don't get to be evil and have the audience sympathize with you. It doesn't work. And no amount of going, oh, it was a pleasure to meet you, Master Chief, will actually overcome that, considering if she'd had her way, she never would have met him in the first place because he would no longer physically exist. They managed to make Cortana look completely evil in her first scene, and now, for some reason, we're supposed to sympathize with her because she's being friendly to him and he's ignoring her. It's like, no, she's getting what she deserves. If anything, I think this supposed sympathy for someone who's being entirely two-faced says more about the writers and the showrunners than anything else in this show. And Halsey's just pitching it, oh, she's going to enhance your abilities 100-fold. She's going to make you even better. Yes, Master Chief is perfect. Well, he will be. When he fits a woman. Batwoman jokes never get old, do they? But I have to say, my most disliked part of the entire show is this. And I don't know whether it's deliberate or not, but I struggle to believe it isn't.
This is a great leap forward for all of us.
The Great Leap Forward. Millions of people died during the Great Leap, with estimates ranging from 15 to 55 million, making it the largest or second largest famine in human history. And this wasn't accidental, it wasn't a feat of nature, this was done deliberately by human leaders, and for some reason, we're referencing this on Halo. And I really struggle to believe that the writers of this show do not know what that thing is, and didn't know what they were saying when they put that line in the show. Will Cortana be the next great leap forward? Find out, only in next episode. Which also includes Master Chief's colonic irrigation, complete with internal video footage. I've just realised we still haven't got to that part of the episode. But don't worry, it's coming up. I do kind of like that on futuristic spaceships, we still use keyboards to communicate with each other. Just type a little bit away on the QWERTY. But this ship seems to have very inefficient ways of communicating with each other, because she detects a ship, has to get up and walk over to the captain, who didn't even respond to this big alarm going off until she actually walked up to him. She tells him about the slipstream anomaly and where it's about to appear, and he goes and looks out the window like he's looking at his neighbours from across the street coming home and can't mind his own business. Are you telling me that the most advanced technology on this ship that they have to observe something is out of the window? No sensor data, no screen to look at, no magnified heads-up display. No, I'm just going to go and look out the window, mate. I see if I can see him. Someone fetch the binoculars. But at this point, they are crapping themselves because a Covenant ship just dropped out right next to them. Luckily, it seems largely dead in the water and it's not armed its weapons. So what do? They decide to fire. I don't know if you've noticed the difference in the size of ship here, but you're basically a toothpick to that thing. If that tiny frigate could beat the Covenant ship, this war should be over very quickly. But it gets stranger when the Covenant ship hails them. But rather than the Covenant, it's obviously the woman with the book, and she's saying she's alone. I'm all alone over here. Please come and save me. Because for some reason, the Covenant left the ship, left her on it, didn't kill her, and now she's managed to fly it somewhere else, next to a friendly human ship. And none of them think this is weird. Surely the fact a human could fly a Covenant ship would be odd, let alone the fact that the Covenant would leave your ship and not wipe out the human on board it. I do love, though, how we cut to this reveal and the music goes ta-da, as if it's like, oh, that was a twist you never saw coming. Nobody knew who that woman was on the other end of the hail. This guy's got worms coming out of his legs. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with what they do next. I don't know if the showrunners think that smug women somehow makes them look strong and powerful. No, it doesn't. She does seem to be a fan of Batman, though, as they've got his symbol all over the ship. Oh, probably just pissed off a load of Halo fans. Actual fans, not fans of the show. Pablo thinks it's the other way around. But then again, Pablo seems to have as many brain cells as he does facial expressions. It's time to touch the magic triangle again so we can reuse the same dream footage that we've used for the last 3 episodes and save some cash. I also think that saving cash is why he's out of his armor so much. It must take quite a lot of time and effort to put that suit on every time before filming. And quite frankly, they're just lazy and they can't be bothered. But this time he's decided that it's a 2-hand job. And then we go back to the dream sequences, which we've seen, oh, so many times before. But this time it's different, because while it is a good job we've got his hands on screen, because otherwise with that facial expression I'd think he was doing something else as he shakes back and forwards. Halsey has another plan as she asks Cortana to put him in stasis. Turns out that Cortana has got a kill switch on his brain and can just switch him off whenever she wants and take complete control of him. So she just turns off Master Chief, which again is evil, and tries to interface with the artifact herself, although as you can see it just immediately powered down the moment he left the room. And the fact that Cortana is willing to do this to someone, and at the same time call it a partnership and be all goody two-shoes friendly with him, is why I despise her. I'm pretty sure Cortana is meant to be this nice person with Master Chief, but in this show, every single time they have a woman, it's like, we need to make her powerful, so let's make her evil, and they've just done it again with an AI this time. And Cortana isn't just evil, she's also thick, because she's like, well, if you gave me full control, then I'd easily be able to access the artifact. Bearing in mind, the only data point she has is that when she took control, the device immediately shut off. So if she took complete control, it would still shut off. This is common sense, and yet apparently the most advanced AI who's more intelligent than everyone on Earth can't even keep up with me. Why are you hiring scriptwriters to write advanced intelligent AI when they can't even keep up with their own script? It's still not the most ridiculous part of the episode, because now we've got Magic Trash Woman coming over to the ship. And of course they're very cautious, because we all just all naively trust a voice on a radio. Well, at least trust them enough to let them out of the ship when we've got 50 different guns pointed at them. At least this is what I call a greeting. This scene looks very Starship Troopers, and I can't quite place my finger on why. I think it's the helmets. But the actress herself has gone from smug cow to, help me, I'm scared. So, you know, she's got more dynamic range than Master Chief does, which is an advantage, albeit a very low bar to actually pass. So they all let her out of the airlock with their guns pointed at her. And to be fair, the actress is pretty decent. She pulls off the whole scared look very well. I don't know why her clothes seem to be held up by her thumbs alone, but, you know, fashion, eh? Now, I'm not exactly sure what all this drama is for. Obviously, they're making sure she's not a threat. I don't know why she's playing along with it, but either way, she gets down on the ground. They pat her down to make sure she's not got any weapons on her, and the moment she's clean, they just assume she's safe. The thing is, she's still playing along with it at this point, so she stands up, bearing in mind that she's in exactly the same position she was before they patted her down and stood there. I don't know why she's gone along with any of it. And then we move on to her plan, bearing in mind all those guns are still pointed at her. All these worms come out of these grates and like start diving at them and crawling on the floor. Now, all of these people have guns, and they know that she is in on it and actually set him up. This guy, the main guy who's just actually been taken in by her, has a pistol in his hand and it's raised, and she's just standing there doing nothing. Why does he not shoot her in the face? In the open, without cover, not moving, with nothing protecting her. And instead, everyone's shooting all around her, the floors, the sides, the roof, all of it. No one puts a single bullet in her head. All I'm saying is you'd think if you'd let on a kind of a traitor that set you up and is now getting you attacked, that person should be the first to drop. And we get this scene, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to be badass, but doesn't make any sense. She's walking through the ship at them, clearly on the side of the enemies, and no one even tries to shoot her. At this point, this guy knows that all of his friends, all of the people under his protection have died because of her, and he's still not shooting at her. She's out in the open in front of him. I don't think I've ever seen plot armor this thick, or writers. So while we've got all this stuff of people being covered in worms and being dragged away, I can't even enjoy that because I'm still thinking, why has no one even fired at you? They could have done it. She could have had an energy shield on her or anything. They could have made it make sense in so many different ways. But instead, what we've got is just a load of stupid people that don't even shoot the main threat, their main enemy, the one that betrayed them and is directly in front of them in the open. And I can't feel sorry for a single one of these people when I think they're all idiots. He still doesn't even try and stop her. He doesn't do anything to her. He had a pistol before. Now, he's dropped his weapon. Yo, what a great soldier you are. She's in the next episode, I can't have shot her. Interestingly, this is also similar to how it'll look when we go inside Master Chief's colonic next episode. But they hang him over the table and interrogate him and essentially want to know where Earth is. And he's like, nah, you'll never find out from me. And rather than actually interrogate him or try and do anything to persuade him otherwise, she can't be bothered with any of that. We had to cut anything interesting just so we could talk about Halsey's feelings for a while. And then she, like, stabs him in the eye with her fingernail. Her laser fingernail. I mean, firstly, Wolverine. But secondly, do you know how awkward it would be to fight with your fingernails? Fists, actually much more reasonable to fight with than fingernails. But if they have the technology to do stuff like that, why don't they do that with everything? That would be amazing. You like stick them all over you and just go hedgehog on people. You'd be like a death Sonic. Now, somehow she knows how to access the data on a UNSC ship. I don't know how she knows that. But Master Chief returns to the Spartans and says, no, I've been cleared to return to active duty. It's all fine. And we get to see again that their loyalty is to Master Chief. They trust him, doesn't matter what his decision was, doesn't matter what happened. They've seen him fight, know what he can do, know that he's had their back, and so they're going to have his. I do at least like the squad loyalty between the group. Although if they're just using that narrative so that Halsey can make them betray him in the future, then I'm not going to enjoy that. Or if they give them all some kind of weird Cortana version, which overrides their entire brain, and then they turn on Master Chief. That's going to be an ass as well. It's possible, though, because you can almost smell the terrible scriptwriting from here. But Master Chief tries to walk off, and like an awkward ex-girlfriend, Cortana turns up at the worst possible moment. Hello, I'm an evil AI, which is trying to take over all of your brains, but I'm going to try and appear really friendly. And just starts spouting off, I'll be working with Master Chief to provide logistical information. And obviously, they're quite confused about it. But so am I, because she's just blatantly lying to everybody and appearing really friendly. And none of this fits in with what we're actually told she's supposed to be doing. And the more she keeps trying to be friendly, the more perverse it sounds, and the more I completely can't stand her as a person. And the worst thing is, it makes everyone else look like an idiot because none of these people actually even consider that she might actually be evil. And they keep pitching Master Chief as if he's the bad guy because she's being friendly. And he's like, no, AI off, AI shut off, AI stop talking. She's like, I'm introducing myself, John. Yes, and you're also trying to take over his entire brain and kill him. So I don't really care about your feelings or how hurtful they are. But for some reason, I'm meant to be. This show seems to treat it like you're the bad guy if someone's acting two-faced in front of you and you're not nice to them. No, you don't get to demand that someone is polite to you when you're evil, but just happen to be polite at that exact second. And so we end up in a weird situation where Master Chief is actually acting completely justifiably because he's got this evil being in his face, except he doesn't actually know that he's justified, and the person who's evil is acting like he's the one in the wrong. It's bizarre, and I don't really understand what they're going for. Cortana is lawful evil. I'm just here to destroy you for your own good and make you better, because I'm superior to you. So it doesn't matter if you get wiped out. Tally-ho. Oh, this is a scene between Quan of a kid, and I just don't care about any of it at all. This is the dude's wife trying to convince her not to actually go back to Madrigal because she might die, and I'm just seeing that as an advantage at this point. And Quan is talking to someone who's trying to help her and has had her entire planet wiped out and still manages to come across as a completely unreasonable, self-righteous little ass. Even like, I'm not you. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I've got to go and save my planet. My planet can still be saved, unlike yours, where everyone you know and love has died. And she doesn't care at all. It's horrific. We're supposed to like this girl. She's supposed to be one of the main characters. And the way she treats everyone, she should be ejected out of an airlock and everyone just lets her get away with it. It's insane. But instead of an airlock, what is the response that this woman gets for being completely and utterly disrespected in her own home?
The universe would be diminished without you in it.
I would celebrate for an entire year and not regret a second of it. So far, I'm just kind of rooting for the Covenant at this point. It makes no sense that we're supposed to root for these people to win when none of the people are actually good in any way, shape, or form. We've got Cortana giving Master Chief advice on how to Google. No, I'm not making that up.
You've gotten quite good at dismissing me, but you're not as good at targeting your search query.
Cortana, the master of Google Foo. But she has to know what he's searching for, so he starts to tell her about her memories. And he says, they feel like my memories. He goes, it doesn't help me to know how you feel. I'm like, well, I agree with you. I hate feelings in TV shows. We spent the entire last episode purely talking about his feelings. So now, I'm sorry, if you're going to start saying they're irrelevant, I have to question even more, what was episode 2 about? I'm more than happy to eradicate just talking about everyone's feelings in this show, but if you do, you're going to end up with about half an hour of footage for your entire series. But from his description, she comes up with 103 planets. He starts going through them. But it triggers a different memory in him where he lost one of his Spartans because he didn't feel anything, and that's all down to that magic vitamin C tablet he's got shoved in his back. But it makes him realize that he feels the memories and actually feels emotions during them, as opposed to now where he's completely numb. But that doesn't make any sense when you think about the first episode, where the only reason he saved Quan is because he felt sorry for her. I at least thought that the magic triangle was awakening his emotions and overcoming that pellet in his back, but it seems like no, he just felt some in a dream once, and that was enough to make him change his entire behavior and go against the UNSC, even though it could cost him his entire life. Because he felt the emotion of a dog? I mean, it's ridiculous. But next up, we get this.
Dr. Halsey, we have an issue.
And that has to be understatement of the year. Welcome to the scene where you see Master Chief like never before. We've gone from actually trying to justify him taking his helmet off because we saw it for a nanosecond in a game once if you completed it on Legendary, to let's just show his dong, everybody. In the future, Master Chief will simply defeat the Covenant by swinging it around and hitting people in the face with it, because he's just that well endowed. I don't know what this scene is for. I don't know why it's happening. I don't know why it's in the show. Was it to balance out that other weird scene that we had in episode 2, where actually the woman with the Covenant took all the stuff off for absolutely no reason whatsoever? Because if anyone's like, oh, you just got double standards, you'd accept one but want the other. No, I've got a problem with both of them. I don't know why this is here. All he's meant to be doing is taking a pallet out of his back, but for some reason, he's taken everything off and is just swinging in the breeze. I mean, I can understand that at least the Halsey actress wants to cop a good eyeful, but I don't know why I'm forced to. This really just seems like it was written in so that the scriptwriters and the showrunners could get a good look at their main actor. Of course, Cortana's big brain take on why he's done this is, I think it's the visions he was experiencing. Yeah, he dreamt of his dog, and for some reason that makes him want to run around in his birthday suit. Makes a lot of sense. And Cortana's like, I could put him in stasis. And I'm like, yeah, well, does that freeze all parts of him? I don't know. That could probably be useful depending on exactly what Halsey's used him for in the past, I guess. But Halsey tells Cortana to actually help him remove the pallet, so that manipulates him into thinking that she's a friend. And Cortana just goes along with this and has no problem with this because she's evil and just acts friendly, but for some reason we're still supposed to like her. The moral compass of modern day shows is just spinning in a circle at record speed. I can't even show you many of the pictures in the scene because you see everything. Well, everything except for one tiny little part of him. That was a deliberate choice of words. What is she even looking at? Just as you're about to see the main course, there happens to be a little tiny break in the mirrors, which is very, very coincidentally placed. That's the only thing saving you, because you see everything else. And I don't know why that's improved, because we get a back view in front of mirrors just to make sure that you do fully see the back and the front of him at the same time. I've not seen such carefully placed camera and mirror action since I went to the ASMR section of Twitch. But she does guide him successfully to take the pallet out. But the manipulative little cow's still going at it. He's like, thank you. She's like, I told you, Master Chief, I'm here for you. Yes, and you actually want to completely take control of his body, which is probably why you're there, observing it, because you think it's going to be yours in the future. And if anyone's screaming, Cortana isn't evil, well, she is in this. This isn't the actual canon. So whatever she's like in canon, it's kind of, well, they've ruined her then. They've completely ruined her. Turns out, though, that one of the Spartans has been playing Peeping Tom on him the entire time. This is another reason why he probably shouldn't have been in his birthday suit, because it could have been that she's observing Cortana because she doesn't trust her. Whereas now, she's just a peeping Tom in the showers. But we're about to get even more stupid, because about 30 seconds ago is when he removed the pallet from his body, and already he's beginning to feel and think differently. Look, I know in episode 2 that guy said if you take the pallet out, everything comes back to you. I was thinking it'd be over the course of months or years, not 3 seconds. If that tablet is meant to control the Spartans, they've designed it terribly. But now we've got Master Chief going, everything's so beautiful. I can appreciate beauty again because now I can feel, What I wanted from the show was John Wick fighting aliens, and instead what I got was some hipster in an art gallery. During this scene, we've got Cortana telling him how trains work. On the one hand, I'm like, you're an idiot. Why can't you see that Cortana doesn't have your best interest in mind? And on the other, this is a man who doesn't understand how trains work. What? I'm clearly expecting too much from him. And now he's seeing couples together, and it's making him want to do it himself. He can even now go out and appreciate music in the 5 minutes he's had his pellet removed. Oh yeah, I don't know if you remember in the games that bit where Master Chief went off and started debating the positives and negatives of neoclassicism and realism compared to the romanticists of different periods. But apparently, that's what Master Chief's got to do now, everybody. That's what I wanted from a show inspired by a first-person shooter. Don't shoot anyone, that's too expensive. No, have him go to a concert instead. Even picks up a ball and lobs it back to people. Why? What has this got to do with Master Chief? Oh yeah, that might be the most Halo thing I've ever seen. A guy catching a ball. This is the guy who says, we're going to do everything to make this Halo the best Halo universe it's ever been. Yeah, everyone's always played those Halo games and thought, you know what this really needs to make it perfect? A cello. Oh, maybe I just want to hear music like everybody else. Nobody cares. Go and shoot something like you deserve. He even likes pets. Oh, he's a dog person now. He didn't like dogs before. He probably just saw them as food. But now he's had his pellet removed for all of 30 seconds. He really wants to stroke one. Suddenly, he just can't resist their cute little ears. I don't even know what this is meant to be. I don't even know that much about Halo, and I hate everything about this entire scene. But he's seen a dog, and the dog has inspired knowledge within him. But he's gone back to the headquarters, and he really wants this door opened. Cortana, open that door for me. But of course, Halsey is watching everything, just like she was in that shower scene, and tells Cortana that actually no, she should open it. So Cortana clearly seems loyal to Halsey and not Master Chief. Again, something that makes me despise her even more. She does open the door, though, and goes to touch the magic triangle, but Cortana's screaming at him, don't touch it! It makes your heartbeat go higher! And he's like, well, he's already touched it before and he was fine. I don't know why you think it's unusual this time. And Halsey clearly wants him to touch the artifact, so now she is actually going against Halsey's directive for no reason. Halsey wants him to touch it, he wants it to touch it, and for some reason Cortana's going, no, this time I'm going to think on my own. They can't even keep the characters consistent in 20 seconds. But this time he gets it in a death grip, and you shouldn't do that, you'll lose all sensation. So then we see all the dream sequences that we've seen repeatedly for the past 3 episodes to try and save some money and waste some time in the show. But this time you see them burying something in a very, very, very small hole. That's important later. And he's shaking back and forth like it's a big major deal, considering it's just giving him some memories. I don't know why any of this is stressing him out at all. And this is where we find out there's actually 2 of them, a much larger piece combined with the smaller piece, which is what they already own. and they fit inside each other. But do you remember that tiny hole? Because later on, the scientists start saying that, oh, maybe they buried the bigger piece in that hole. But they've got a big visual representation of how big it is, and it's way bigger than that hole that they were supposed to have buried in. It actually was. The makers of this show couldn't even be bothered to dig a hole big enough for the device that was meant to be buried in it. They're not just cheap, they're lazy. This is Cortana acting fake concerned for the person who she wants to erase from existence. I don't know, maybe she's just concerned about the body that she's living in rather than the person inside it. But he saw rings from the surface, and so with that he gets Cortana to narrow down what planet he could actually be on. And she narrows it down to 3. And here we are. Or at least in some weird advanced holographic representation of it. Apparently it was part of Reach for Life, a program designed to spread human life to planets which were otherwise uninhabited. Although it does go, well, at least that's what it says in the promotional material. So in other words, that's not why they were there at all. They had a definitely different aim, and he was part of that. It was all just a cover-up. But he says, why are they not there anymore? And then we get a plague story. That doesn't make sense either, because they say a plague ripped across the planet, which is why it all got shut down. He says, what happened to my parents? And she says survivors were shipped out to a space station, meaning him. So she says, in accordance with emergency procedures, the entire planet is quarantined off to prevent further spread. Like, but you just said the survivors were actually shipped off to a different space station. So which one was it? Were all these people shipped off to a space station, or was the entire planet quarantined and no one was allowed off it? You've said 2 things in 2 sentences which directly contradict each other. And I wouldn't mind if you're trying to make out that, oh, there's actually more to this and that story doesn't make sense. That's fine. If Master Chief actually questioned it, but he just accepts 2 contradictory pieces of information next to each other, as if both can be true. But Halsey appears and he starts telling her everything from he removed his pallet to where he's going. And of course, Halsey knows all of this, but she's just playing along as if she doesn't and she's being told for the first time. Honestly, you should probably think that she does know this, considering the entire station is monitored. And she suggests, oh, we'll send probes off to this planet and find it out. He's like, no, I'm going. You can stay here and look at all the data from as many probes as you want, but I'm going there. And then she just offers to go with him. I'm not even really sure why. This is Quan being the most annoying person in the universe all over again, as she's being looked after, fed, treated with respect, while all she's done is been an arse back to everybody, and now she's trying to steal his ship. And he finds her doing it, and for some reason doesn't just immediately shoot her in the face like she deserves. She's been caught trying to steal the ship by a guy in Spartan armor, and she goes,
I'm going to free Trickle and you can't stop me.
I think he can, love. Trust me, dear. If I can, he certainly can. So you should probably keep your mouth shut. And he's like, well, I could kill you. That'd stop you. And she immediately starts begging and then promises some money. And I just don't care about this character's storyline at all. I don't even know why it's in the show. But she starts lying, saying her family's rich and everything, which isn't true. He's like, well, go there, I'll collect the money from your family, or I'll actually just collect the bounty on you. And just hand her into the bounty. They'll probably come and collect her, to be honest. Can we check that the bounty needs a heartbeat? Because otherwise, we could make the show a lot more interesting immediately. So this is a woman who didn't realize what her story was, is now taking apart a UNSC ship, which presumably she's never been on before, and trying to activate all of the data on it. How does she know how to do any of this stuff? If the Covenant have taught her this skill, why? When she asked to leave their planet, they didn't want her to because it was too risky. So why were they teaching her how to do it if they thought that she'd never go off planet in the first place? Of course it doesn't work, and they just wipe all the files anyway. We really should know more about these characters' skills and their limits and their background so we know what they're meant to be able to do, rather than just having them able to do everything all of the time. Although I do like, she radios back to her ship and goes, there's nothing here. No, there was until you just wiped it. But she decides they're going back to Madrigal, and it is key here that she decides, not the Covenant, not anyone else on that ship. She's in charge. The human is bossing around the Covenant. Now, the humans pick up the message, but they can't understand what it says because, coincidentally, some magnetic field got in the way of the communications. It seems like pretty awful technology if your communications don't even work around a magnet. But Halsey going off planet does give her a lot more time with the artifact, and without any of Halsey's interference. So we get to see just how good she really is. She claimed in the last episode she invented everything. Who knows, maybe by the end of the next episode she's going to invent her own magic triangle. Look at the size of that second device. The hole wasn't that big. I can't believe they didn't even bother to dig a hole big enough for the device that they show us in the same episode. They didn't even have to dig the hole, they could have just raked up the dirt a little bit. If you had a book you cared about, you wouldn't do that to it. You would destroy that book at record speed, bending it like that. And Halsey and the other creepy scientists are really scared that, oh, well, he's getting his memories back, and if he remembers more things about this place, the truth could bring us all down. Presumably the UNSC wiped out his family and took him, that's what I'm guessing. Claimed it was a plague, which is why the story obviously didn't make sense, even though none of the characters in the entire show seem to realize that when it's told to them. It's like, well, if he turns against us, that is what Cortana is for. And she's behind him as if she's about to stab him in the back. Congratulations, you made me despise Cortana in her very first episode. Just like Quan, and nearly every other character in the entire series. I think to carry on watching a show, I'm supposed to like at least one person in it that I can root for, and instead I just hope they all fail and that the Covenant wipe everyone off the face of the universe. Hey, maybe ending all sentient life in the universe is the best thing for the show. At least then I'll get the sweet release of never needing to watch it again. Well, congratulations, Halo, you made the third episode worse than the second. At least, this one wasn't about feelings all of the time. At least the parts that were when he removed his literal feelings suppressor and started listening to cellos in a park. I mean, I don't even know what this is. But before, I thought the Magic Triangle had woken up his feelings, which at least made episode 2 make sense because it was clearly emotionally driven. But apparently no, during that entire time, he was suppressed, and only now can he actually feel. And the moment you take out those pills, about 3 seconds later, you get all of your emotions back for some reason. The show doesn't make sense. It contradicts itself over things like the plague all of the time, and every single character in the entire thing is completely insufferable, and I can't stand any of them. It's treating evil things like Cortana like we should actually feel sorry for her when she gets bad-mouthed or treated with disrespect, even though she actually deserves a lot worse than that. Quan doesn't contribute anything to the series, and in fact all of her scenes should have been cut from this episode because they're all pointless. And then you get in this scene of Master Chief, which I think is only put in there so that whoever's working on the cast and crew gets to have a look at his arse. It added nothing to the story and wasn't even required for the story because he was pulling it out of his lower back. Every single episode, we've seen more of Master Chief, from his helmet to his armor being removed, and now all of his clothes. In the next one, we're going to have to go far, and quite frankly, I'm looking forward to it. I've never seen the inside of someone's bowels before, but now we're all going to get that. That's the only way they can top this, unless for some reason they turn him inside out. Maybe he'll go in an X-ray machine, who knows? We're going to go many layers deep here, and by the end of the series, we're going to end up at some kind of subatomic level. I can't wait to see Master Chief's protons in action. But all in all, I don't know where this show is meant to be going, and I don't know what it's meant to be providing anyone. Who is the audience that is meant to look at this and think, yeah, that was good? I'm not sure they even exist. So to Pablo and your insinuation that people don't like the show actually aren't real fans, I can only say this. Whatever you've made, it's not Halo. It's not talented, it's not clever. But most of all, it's not entertaining. And if you thought that the sight of your dong swinging in the breeze was actually going to save the series and make this the best universe ever, then you have completely and utterly failed, in my opinion. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you, unfortunately, reviewing the next episode. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.